This video is not made for kids. It's designed to be suitable for all audiences. Okay, actually, at the end of this episode, we do talk about the TOS episode, The Enemy Within, in which a character does some not suitable for all ages things to a certain female crew member. So, you know, maybe a little bit of discretion for this one. But quite frankly, the FTC scares me. So this video is an adult's perspective on Prodigy and a review from that perspective and for other adults and parents, but not necessarily parents. Hello and welcome back to another Prodigy review. You like that's my Tom Paris played it right. I don't know if it's gonna make it on frame, but I like my Tom Paris plate. But yes, episode 6, the 5th one. This is the sort of thing that makes my digital backup naming sequence sad. Where yes, we left off Prodigy way back in like Thanksgiving, I think it was, where, you know, basically they'd gotten the team together, right? We're not really any outstanding plot holes or anything. All the teams together. Gwen left their father behind. I hope that's their name. I'm really bad with names. Gwen, Rock Talk, Jenkum Pog, Zero, Murph. Did I say Rock Talk? Janeway, and I can't remember the purple guy's name. It's okay, he's only like the closest thing to a main character this show has. But anyways, I'm looking forward to getting back into the story and seeing where they take our crew. Because with the Protostar engine, could be really anywhere. It could even be the Alpha Beta quadrants. It's not going to be, but it could. Quick bit of admin before I start my review. I mentioned this in the last Discovery episode, I did at least, but if you've been following just my Prodigy reviews, this one was a bit later, of course, because as you can see, I'm back in my parents' basement, but by the next video, I will be in my college dorm at Bellingham, so I'll have my fantastic internet speeds. However, it's more likely than not that the Prodigy reviews aren't going to be going up at like 1, 2 a.m. whenever I was getting them before, because I've got a roommate now, and sitting down to record Prodigy reviews at like 11:30 p.m., it's probably not going to happen. It's almost certainly not going to happen. We'll see how things go. It'll probably be like the last review, if you can remember way back in Thanksgiving, where because of Discovery, I just kind of woken up on Thursday morning, well, Thursday afternoon, let's be honest. I watched the episode, then did the review and uploaded it. So, you know, expect these sometime, you know, around midday Thursdays. But really, I don't know. I'm gonna learn just as much as you do. But I'll still try and get them as early as possible, and still hoping for every episode. It helps not having any classes Thursday. And without further ado, Tom Paris and I are gonna wait for the next episode to come out and enjoy our review. My review, Tom Paris. Well, Tom Paris is actually reviewing these episodes. He just gives all of them a thumbs up. Out of the way. You're in Tom Paris's way. That was a very Lower Decks episode of Prodigy. But yeah, it's nice slipping back into Prodigy. It's just enjoyable. You know, you sit back, you enjoy it, fun stuff happening. But also, there's kind of the hints or the undertones of, you know, the deeper stuff. The trauma, the problems all the crew's having. Which is good. I mean, we're still early days, but also, that's probably how I describe early Steven Universe. The best show in existence and one of 2 perfect shows. But by God, we finally figured out the reason behind the 5-week break of Prodigy, because I don't know who they hired to go through archival footage for four separate characters in Star Trek, major characters, and try and find dialogue that fit this script. Because by God, I've tried to do some similar things, and let me tell you, that is not an easy job. Those people did not get paid enough. And I was actually thinking for this review, like, it's definitely, I gotta give him credit for the concept. I'm pretty sure Dr. Crusher was actually voiced by Gates McFadden, because the others I could recognize a lot of their lines, even place some of them, but for Dr. Crusher, there were ones I didn't recognize, the audio quality was better, and she sounded a little bit older than her TNG character as someone currently watching TNG. And great for her to come back for it. We'll get to Chakotay too. But there are definitely limitations with that. You really, obviously, you restrict your dialogue a hell of a lot by only going for the archival footage. You kind of have the problems of wavering audio quality, which I was very surprised when Ethan Peck's voice didn't come out of Spock. Like, you have a Spock nowadays. But ultimately, a lot of kind of those things where, sure, there's some problems. I really respect them for kind of going like, yeah, the quality's different, but we're gonna do it anyway. Trials and Tribulations is another good example where a lot of studios probably would have gone, no, like there's too much of the difference there. But I do respect them for going with that as opposed to just recasting all these people. But ultimately, I think some of my complaints or the problems that might come with that decision are rectified by this screen right here. In loving memory of Leonard Nimoy, James Doohan, and Renee. I don't think I've ever said his name out loud before. And I can't French. I'm very sorry. Because as I mentioned before, this felt very Lower Decks. Like, there were constant little references early on, and the inclusion of 5 major recurring characters plus Chakotay. And, you know, the constant references. The kids aren't going to get that, right? That wasn't for the kids. But I appreciate the symbolic nature of, well, as the dedication says, who inspired us to go boldly, and particularly the original series cast, but yeah, also Odo in Crusher, which, by the way, first major Deep Space Nine reference. Actually, the first recurring Deep Space Nine character to appear outside of Deep Space Nine. Finally. But as I was saying before, the first people, I mean, classic Star Trek, you know, before the cancellation, which I'm learning is a little less of a Star Trek is Dead in 2005. But, you know, the people who inspired, well, the writers, me, you know, most of the people watching this video, if not all of the people watching this video, like the people who make this plate. And now the whole point of Prodigy is to introduce Star Trek and Starfleet values to the younger generation, and to the next generation, and to bring them in to the Star Trek family, which, sure, you could argue is some sort of cynical, well, Paramount's gonna need fans when we're all dead. But as I'm sure most of the, well, everyone who's not actually everyone Alex Kurtzman and below is going to see it, is like, yeah, passing on that vision and that utopia and that hope. Some of the other series might not have captured that as much as some of us would like, but I think they're still trying. And I think Prodigy is still very well set up to go there. Still a bit too early to say. Of course, it is only episode 6. But yeah. And so I could nitpick things, like why is Uhura at Ops as opposed to Comms? You know, I could nitpick some little stuff like that, but ultimately, it's a holodeck simulation. I mean, it's your fantasy football team, so to say. Like, sure, you could put a bit weird that the computer would do it, but like, in loving memory. Technically, Nicole, oh, come on, Nathan. Nichelle Nichols? I hope I got that right. She's not dead, so I guess I could technically critique her, but no, I like that. Well, there were functionally, narratively, you know, some issues that come up with that. It was a bold decision, especially Uhura's another voice actor, well, an actual actor. Not to say voice actors aren't actual actors, but, you know, a live action actor who they've recast since TOS with Strange New Worlds. But yeah, it's made up for the symbolism behind it. And yeah, it was fun seeing the crews all do their own thing, even if it was archival audio, obviously archival. I mean, for someone who like knows these characters so well, and even stitching, like Spock's speech at the end was where I really felt like, yeah, you're stuck with this dialogue. It would have been a better story if you got Ethan Peck to do Spock. But shall we move on to Chakotay? As soon as he said, give me your best, you know, on the holodeck, I'm like, oh, so this is where Chakotay reprises his role. No, turns out he's a major character. I really like the development. It's always nice to see legacy characters get promoted after their series. So Captain Chakotay. I think it's going to be great seeing a modern writers tackle Chakotay. And, well, to be frank, when I say modern writers, I mean people who aren't under whatever fraud Native American consultant guy they had under Voyager. If you don't know the story, look it up. It's pretty well documented. But the Native American consultant, I don't know if it was all of that classic Star Trek, but Voyager was a fraud. He was outed as a fraud before he was hired on Voyager. I won't get into allegations there. But yeah, I'd really love for 2 things. First, to have met my Native American roommate in person, and also for my Native American roommate to have met Chakotay, because they could be a hell of a lot more insightful than I am. They're only on Deep Space Nine. But it'd be great to see, like, an actual proper representation. I mean, Chakotay, he's still a Mexican guy. actor. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But at least, you can do the culture a bit more justice there. And I hope he is more of a major role. Even if it's just what Will Riker got on Lower Decks, I'd probably be pretty happy with that. I doubt I was gonna say, I doubt they'll bring him on for like a proper, maybe he shows up just as the captain after season 1 or something. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe that's your story arc is trying to rescue Chakotay for your whole however many seasons. But they got Kate Mulgrew back for Janeway. I don't know what Chakotay's voice actor's up to nowadays. If he's like a super big name or in demand, but I mean, he's got to be around the same level as Janeway, at least. Or at least not more important. Well, more big, not important. It's also just answered one of my complaints, actually, of why holographic Janeway wouldn't have any knowledge of the mission if they were the only passenger. But they're not. Chakotay would have gone with knowledge of the mission. Memory fragment there. Chakotay is he's not professionally, but he's an archaeologist. He's into archaeology and digging stuff up. And you got the race, I'm never going to remember their name, but Gwen's race and the Diviners race, where somehow the Federation has gotten fragments of them. I wouldn't be surprised I'd probably even bet that Chakotay's mission on the Protostar, they sent an archaeologist specialist to go dig up stuff about this ancient, powerful culture. And there's plenty of cultures, plenty of ways that Delta Quadrant species can get cultural artifacts in the Beta Quadrant, or vice versa. You got the Iconians, who we now know are still kicking, thanks to Discovery. Maybe this is where the Federation discovers they're still kicking. You got the Preservers, the Precursors, who may be the same people, and look at Voyager if you want technologies to go warp fast. This is all a high-level description, of course, but I bet my money on that little description of the plot. I'd be curious if any other Voyager cast reprised their roles. I'd say we'd know, but we didn't know about Gates McFadden. The others are archival footage. That makes a bit more sense that we wouldn't know. But yeah, we didn't know about Beverly. I was going to say we didn't know about Tom Paris for Lower Decks, but I literally have the proof we did know about Tom Paris sitting on my, I don't know what you'd call that, but it's sitting on it. And I was also thinking one final little general thought. When I saw the title Kobayashi, Discovery Season 4's first episode was Kobayashi Maru, just the full thing. And I was kind of thinking, like, is the Kobayashi Maru a bit overplayed now? I was like, well, it's a Wrath of Khan thing, you had it constantly throughout the classic stuff. That's probably just a bit of the bias of classic over modern, irrational bias, so close together with Discovery Season 4, Episode 1. The point of Alex Kurtzman is to oversee all the shows and make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. But under the context of Prodigy, the Kobayashi Maru is a great thing to put in front of the audience of kids who are likely never have seen the Kobayashi Maru specifically, but never have encountered some sort of no-win scenario type philosophy. It was only kind of lightly touched on, mostly a vessel for Lower Decks references, but also Dal's character development. But I think that's a justifiable reason to overplay the Kobayashi Maru a bit. Oh, and I haven't commented on the Enterprise D because I actually knew it was happening. I talked to the one of the Prodigy heads. I can never remember their name. On Twitter, they're very active. They're always great, like obvious Trekkie, talking about canon stuff, very deep, and not many people message him, so you can usually get a little reply back and forth. But he tweeted the Enterprise D bridge. I had a bit of conversation. I'll actually dig it up. Officially, how tall are the Prodigy characters? They seem really small in those pictures. And Aaron J. Waltke, it's probably on screen now, it's a little exaggerated for style. They are kids/teenagers in adult world. And if you look, I did compare it to kind of Wesley standing in the turbo lift and some scenes like that. They are too short in some scenes. It's a bit inconsistent scaling, which I'm a bit more harsh on, I think, because it's Star Trek. Like Steven Universe has inconsistent scaling. I never really complain. And yeah, they're definitely going for a stylized. You can tell, especially with Spock and Odo. But it also kind of makes sense in the context of the holodeck situation of the Kobayashi Maru. You may want to overscale the ship a little bit to make the captains and the cadets you're testing feel small and feel a little less powerful, and they're not big enough for the chair. It kind of goes along with the point of the Kobayashi Maru. But yeah, that's why it wasn't a big deal seeing it pop up, because I knew it was gonna. I want to make one note where Admittedly, I haven't seen The Wrath of Khan too much, but I swear one of the voice clips they used was actually from Star Trek Bridge Crew, the VR game. When they hailed the Kobayashi Maru, it's like, this is the USS Kobayashi Maru, yada yada yada. The audio quality of that, which they could have like just recorded on their own, or stolen from The Wrath of Khan, I swear it's the audio clip from the Star Trek Bridge Crew game. And if anyone could try and verify that, I would love to know. It's possible that both the game and this episode took it from The Wrath of Khan, but it just felt a little too high quality compared to some of the other voice lines, particularly from Spock in his movie era stuff. The distortion it really felt like it was from the game. Without further ado, though, I think I'm going to go ahead and get into the scene by scene, because already this review is getting a bit long for the Prodigy. I think I'm used to sitting here for over an hour talking about Discovery. I enjoyed the little tease we got with Jink and Pog, because I know I was like, I'm going to scrutinize the hell out of that in the review, where it was like, how fast are we going? And Jink and Pog was like, approximately. It's like, 9 point. I'm like, you got that right, but you really need a lot of 9 years. And they just collapse. It's like, fair enough. It's 9 point, however many 9s you need to travel 4 years in however long they were it. Would you still call it warp? I did not watch Prodigy through again before this episode. I'll often do it before new seasons, watch the previous season. I remembered what was happening, basic setup. I kind of regretted that because of scenes like this, I didn't remember exactly where they left off. So I figured they were we picked up right where they left off, where they had exited the warp they had done from escaping Gwen's father, which they have. But then I was like, hang on, when did they land on a planet? When did they abandon Murph? When did they have time for that? But then of course we figured out it was the holodeck, and we went through lower decks. We went through Khan's planet. We went to we even had a not a muck. It's the muck time fight, but what's the piece of music? Da 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 da. The amazing TOS fight music. You even had that. Which, by the way, when Lower Decks references it, I don't think they've ever actually played the music. They've just parodied it, so it was even more Lower Decks than Lower Decks. But I mean, it was just fun. I think that is a benefit of Prodigy being in the Delta Quadrant. There's too much importance in the Alpha Beta Quadrant right around the Federation, but in the Delta Quadrant, nothing really matters. The Borg matter. We got some species we have a little bit of history with, but you can broadly do whatever the hell you want in the Delta Quadrant. I need to remember I'm not on Discovery, and I have to watch my language. But the importance of canon isn't so important when we're in the part of the galaxy we know literally nothing about. We can have a bit of fun without accidentally collapsing, I don't know, the gold press latinum economy by a throwaway line on Rigel 4 or something. I'm going to do a little bit of badge investigating here. In fact, I'm going to throw this image on the screen if I remember to take a screenshot on it. And noticeably at the top there, really hard to tell. I think that might be the sort of Bajoran logo, which actually this might be the solid proof we need to say Bajor joined the Federation. Because, of course, Odo is not a Starfleet officer. And so when you ask for, the best Starfleet officers in history, you're not going to get Odo. And he's not even in his uniform. Well, he is, but not in a Starfleet uniform. However, if you think about it, if Bajor joined the Federation, then sort of retroactively, all of their heroes, their military, their officers and stuff are now a part of Federation history. And you could consider them to be included in Federation officers. There's also the caveat that Odo might have returned home from the Dominion, and so maybe he is actually a Federation officer, but probably not based off his uniform. Because if Bajor's not in the Federation, there's no reason Odo should be on this list. But if they did, I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Not so much for the position they put him in, same with Uhura, but I'll actually defend that by, if the whole point of the Kobayashi Maru is to test a captain, I wouldn't program the computer to choose the best candidates. I would program them to choose middling level, a good crew, but you could definitely do better if you personally tried. I'm noticing 2 sets of temporal badges, which is interesting because I wouldn't think that's the sort of thing you put on your reports in this century. Is Starfleet has no temporal officers. In fact, it's not even Starfleet, are they? The temporal, God, I can't remember the name of their organization. But the Relativity, Daniels, people like that aren't Starfleet because they make comments about not being Starfleet. But nothing in particular stands out. Discovery badges. Actually, I think you've got the Alternative Future, the All Good Things badge is in there towards the bottom. I can't tell you where, but I swear we've seen somewhere else recently. Might have been Discovery I read about. So it's possible that was actually used at some point in Starfleet history. You've got a medical badge from TOS, but yeah, it looks like a lot of stuff we know that's just basic badges. It's kind of interesting, though. You still do the Kobayashi Maru against Klingons in a time where we're allied with them. Like on a ship from an era we're allied with them. I guess diplomatically it's better than someone we're not allied with, but it is a bit odd. Not that I'll complain about seeing the good old Enterprise D. And I love this. It's probably not on screen anymore. I should look at the camera. I love things like this are what are going to get the kids, but also the people who have never seen Star Trek to go back and watch the other ones. Maybe you love Discovery, right? But there's not really anything in Discovery that I'd actually go, I really want to go back and watch classic Star Trek for. I mean, I had seen TOS as a kid, I've said before. I forgot most of it, but I always remembered it really fondly, and I'd say I really enjoyed it. And for years, I was always like, I should go watch TNG. And I never did until it finally pushed me over the edge, as so many YouTubers I watched at the time would constantly reference it, and that among a few other little things, that's what finally pushed me over the edge, was people were referencing it that I watched a lot of. It's like, I like a lot of them were Star Trek jokes. It's like, well, if I want to kind of be a part of this, I gotta watch Next Generation. And that was good enough to then carry me through with the other series. But, you're a kid. You watch Prodigy as a kid, you grow up a bit, maybe, or you get a bit older, and you're like, I want to watch that show again. Or there were so many things in that show that we're talking about the other people. You could remember this scene, and so much might push you to watch Next Generation, or especially the older shows. Well, the older show TOS, where quality level might be a turnoff for a lot of people. I mean, you can see William Hartnell down here. Like, I'll personally put up with a lot of quality low production values, no issue. I mean, it's not even putting up. It's an enjoyment factor in itself. But especially like making Chakotay a main character, like not holographic version of Janeway, but the actual Chakotay. You'd go watch Voyager to learn about the Chakotay and go and see him. And so it's great to just keep that fandom alive. I'm gonna live to 2063, right? I live in Spokane, Washington. Bozeman, Montana is like probably an hour's or two's drive away. Like, I am going to Bozeman, Montana on April 5th, 2063 with my partner. If you're a fan of me, mark that appointment. There better be a small crowd, at least, in Bozeman, Montana, of Trekkies waiting to meet the Vulcans. And it's stuff like that is gonna guarantee there is a small crowd, at least, in Bozeman, Montana, in 41 years. And yes, I do have to remain living near Bozeman, Montana, basically because of Star Trek. But hey, that's where the tech jobs are. If you followed along with the Prodigy's developments and press releases, you'd know, like me, that Gwen was a clone. It's interesting cloning another Gwen. I'm not sure if that kind of hand-touching, the I'll always be, I am and always shall be your friend thing, by the way, great joke. But I'm not sure if that was like a memory or that was actually a Gwen 2, we'll call her. It'd be very interesting. You can do a lot of story things with that. Not a big revelation Gwen was a clone, because I knew that. It was in the press release stuff. Just as it wasn't a surprise Chakotay was coming back, but I was very happily surprised in the manner he did. And I think having it in this episode was perfect, because it was a big deal, Chakotay coming back. It was known. Not by everyone, of course. If I wasn't doing these YouTube videos, I wouldn't have known it. But, you expect him to be in that holodeck lineup. And then he's not. And you're like, oh, I guess it's a different episode. And then you see his face. But, the new hologram forms, it's like, oh, this is it. Oh, he was the captain. Oh, he's, actually in this show. He's not a Tom Paris, shows up for an episode. He's in this show. Also, no Beverly benches still on the Enterprise D. Okay, yes, a lot of people pointed out in my Lower Decks episode that early TNG, or was it late TNG, I really can't remember which, doesn't have the Beverly benches. But it's also true that the vast majority of pictures, particularly the HD ones, as again, I know from the guy who actually made the Enterprise D bridge, like when you Google Enterprise D bridge, the pictures that don't have the Beverly bench are the replica, fan replica, and the ones that do are the real one. So I still get a chuckle out of people basing the Enterprise D in their modern Star Trek off of the replica Enterprise D. It's an outstanding replica. Like, amazing replica. It just doesn't have Beverly benches. If you don't know what they are, they're the benches there and there that Beverly would often sit on. Proper Klingons. Good job. But this was the frame I was looking for. This one was my favorite. I'd also like to shout out to the detail where it bothered me they had Scotty on tactical, but then they actually cut to him using the engineering station that is at the back of the bridge. It did annoy me. I was like, there's engineering on the bridge. But no, they did actually put him in the right place, just not for the hero shot. I said I wouldn't critique that scene too much, but I am a Trekkie. It is in my nature. It is nice to see that Federation security has not progressed past, the good old days where a child with admittedly near Hoshi Shadow levels of language ability can just hack your computer. I'd also like to go back to here to say I loved when he's like, I need a new engineer. Computer, give me a new engineer. And in my head, it's like, this is a really TOS heavy crew, right? Like, you probably should pick someone else. But also, it's gotta be Scotty. Like, it just has to be Scotty. Like, we all know that Chief Miles O'Brien is, in fact, not just the most important engineer, but the most important person in Starfleet history. But it had to be Scotty. That being said, like, I know it wasn't in memory of, and like, that's beautiful and all. But could you imagine if they actually got Colin Meanley to come and voice O'Brien? I think he said he was open to it. They interviewed him after his little Lower Decks cameo. I want that. I don't care what show does it. I just want Chief O'Brien back. just for a little bit. He's got to beat out Worf for that, like most appearances in Star Trek thing. No, I got it. I know you had like an impossible job and you did amazing. But can we talk about how Spock's reaction to Dal like accidentally destroying his own ship with 1,000 souls on board is, you must not tell the crew, you've got to be perfect, is the captain. This was just the one scene where, like, yeah, the dialogue was real choppy because it was literally choppy. They took it from different bits and pieces. Like, I'm sure as a kid it's fine, but it was a bit weird. I did kind of like, though, the figure of that perfect captain, right? That Kirk had a lot. Obviously, they took the scene from, oh god, I should know this. Oh, it's not important. Whatever TOS episode. But Picard actually has it a lot, where the captain's image, when he gets to his heart surgery and stuff, has always bothered me, especially with how like good they are with the crew. Oh, I know what it was. The Enemy Within is the name of the episode, when they had the evil clone Kirk who raped the first officer, who was then mysteriously never seen again. No one really knows why. I mean, as Spock said, clearly she enjoyed being raped, like she was happy on the ship. But anyway, I like that, there was kind of a bit, I almost felt like a bit of a no, like, screw that. Like, the captain's a person, and they don't have to be perfect for the crew. And in fact, that's probably damaging to the person, but also potentially the mission, and the fact that your crew should know that there's an evil Kirk going around raping yeomen on the ship. Can't imagine why she was unhappy with her job and wanting to quit. I did have that FTC disclaimer at the top of these videos. I thought I saw that right. That does not appear to be a Voyager era uniform. That's, we'll call it a Prodigy era uniform redesign, meaning I'm gonna need to get my partner to draw a new thumbnail. I'm gonna need to make a no logo. Dang it, I'll catch up to that eventually. Just yell at me in the comments when all my thumbnails are wrong. But yeah, definitely looking forward to what's next. I don't know if they'll really do a big plot thing, or if there'll be a more episodic show. I mean, 20 episodes a season. They're gonna be an episodic show with serialization elements sprinkled through. That's what most animation like this is. But also, only 5-episode chunks at a time. Like, I don't know. But this episode is starting to... It's longer for Prodigy. It's a bit too long for Prodigy. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see those familiar faces who would comment on the Prodigy videos back. Thanks for watching. I hope I can get new thumbnails and logos soon. I'll see you next time.